As parents, we need to understand that we are our child's best educator. They start learning way before they enter into a organized classroom situation.
We even have to make people who are hard to deal with feel welcome in spaces, because we're dealing with their children, and we're dealing with the aspects of what comes from their family to school.
When that child get ready to start school, that they have a voice into their child's education. They have a voice into the changes that may go on within that school system, and they can use their voice.
We actually built out a framework of the right questions that parents could hold us accountable to, that they can go right into that playbook and say, hey, Trent, Ms. Mosley, I need to understand how are you going to be evaluating instruction?
A lot of parents are not aware of the learning plans that are available to them, so IEPs and 504s. However, a parent has the right to ask for psychoeducational testing for their child.
Teachers tend to give kids more respect whose parents are engaged. You usually see that, when a parent is engaged and maybe a kid didn't turn in an assignment or whatever. If a parent asks, can the student turn in an assignment? Many times the teacher will go ahead and let them do that because of the relationship that they have with that parent.
Stay tuned.
Thank you for joining, and welcome to the Dwelling Place Ministry, Evangelist Doris J. Robertson, where women and men meet wisdom and resources are shared. For the month of September, our supercharged season, we will be broadcasting the best of Evangelist Doris J. Robertson's ministry shorts, therapy moments, and back-to-school empowerment panel. Stay connected weekly on Thursdays and Sundays. Please reference the screen for sewing and contact information for Evangelist Doris J. Robertson Ministry. Please like, comment, and share. And as always, thank you for all of your support.
Well, research has shown that the more a parent is engaged, the greater the positive impact that happens with that child. For many of our young people, as we talk about urban school districts, what recommendations would you have for parents that want to be actively involved in creating a culture of learning at home and school? That's the first part. And then the second part is, how do we do this? How is it done? So either of you that I've just pointed out there, go ahead and feel free to jump in.
So I have several recommendations. First is establish a consistent routine for homework and study. I think setting aside a specific time and place for these activities each day is going to be crucial. This will help kids just in general develop good study habits. And then elaborate a little bit more. I think second, communicating regularly with both teachers and administrators. That is a crucial aspect of making that connection to support the kids. Attend parent-teacher conferences, respond to messages, and don't hesitate to reach out with questions with administrators. And then one that I think that's near and dear to my heart as a former administrator is knowing when your child's principals are visiting classrooms. That's the most important aspect where the administrators should be spending their time, so they can make sure that strong instructional practices are being implemented, where they can provide support to teachers, so that way your children are receiving the best education possible.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with Mr. Mobley when he said creating that environment for education at home. It's very important. Establishing that in the home first. If you establish that in the home and you make that a priority in your children's life, then you're going to have better results with your children because they're getting it at home first. And so creating that time for them to do homework, and even having them put their electronic devices away for a certain amount of time, where they can't use it. And if they're not doing homework, have them read a book or get them interested in other things that will help them to become more intellectual.
Thank you. And I just want to just add a couple of points because Trent Mosley and Mr. Waters made some excellent points. I would just say for parents to actually model that learning attitude as well. A lot of times, how parents view school, how parents view teachers and interactions really does impact the way that students come and their attentiveness to learn, their ability to be able to conflict manage and to want to engage in their learning and with their peers and their classroom teacher. So it's going to be critical that parents model that. How do you have those conversations? How do you ask questions in school when you are concerned about something or having an issue? How do you navigate dealing with your teachers? Maybe if you feel like you're not being treated fairly on all of those types of things, and just actually making sure that you are taking time to model for your children and to have those discussions. And that would be the only additional thing that I would add. I think we've given some great tips so far.
Awesome. I want to continue with you, Dr. Watson, if I could. As we talk about engagement and the engagement, the importance of engagement toward the educational health of a child, what are some specific goals, maybe targets that should be set? Is this something that happens organically, or is this something that we see only taking place at parent-teacher conference when there's a need for discipline or grades are behind? How should a parent begin engaging with a teacher to make sure that there's some specific goals and target to understand what's expected of that child so that they can continue that learning process at home?
Yes, I would say first and foremost, as parents, we need to understand that we are our child's best educator. We are their initial educator as a parent. They start learning way before they enter into a organized classroom situation. So when you understand that you are their primary educator, you think through the lens of how do I see school as supporting the education of my child? So what we do is practically is making sure that we go into that environment, checking that environment out, spending time interviewing your teacher, your child's teacher, to get to know that teacher, get to know how they think, how they operate, so that when your child comes home, you can have those conversations. Go to the school and find out what are the expectations in that classroom. Find out the curriculum. What are the standards for that grade level? And then find out what are some resources that you can have at home to further support your child's learning. Also, it's important, I think, to get a calendar of when can you expect certain communications, when our report cards due, when our parent-teacher conferences, because a lot of times as parents, we're really busy and our schedules are full. And I just think it's critical that we prioritize that, again, as the primary educator of our children. And I would say, don't wait till parent-teacher conference to go up there and to have these conversations, and initiate them and spend time meeting the principal. Come up on your days off or when you have some time on a lunch break or whatever, just to walk around to get to know the school and the environment and the classroom that your child is in. That is so critical because parents, teachers do pay attention to those that are engaged. and I would say out engage outside of the structured engaged times, such as parent teacher conferences or open house nights. But on those other times where you can really see the day to day.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. But Mr. Waters, I'm going to come to you with the next one. You spend a great deal. You've been a teacher for a very long time. As an advocate, in addition to the things that I do as a pastor, I am an advocate for students in education, STEM education, mathematics, and leadership. In the classroom, as you work with parents, oftentimes many of the issues that are being addressed are addressed in a parent-teacher conference. Dr. Watson made a very strong point in saying, really, that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. The parent that is most engaged often gets the attention and the respect, I'll say, of that teacher. As a teacher who has been in the classroom for a very long time, what are some of the things that, as a teacher, you would hope that a parent would engage you as the teacher for their youth?
Well, first of all, my hope is that the parent is concerned about their child's education, because in many instances that's not the case. And I hate to say that, but I see that where kids, their parents are not involved. And I've seen that in sports as well, as I have coached teams. And so it's important that that parent connects with that teacher to find out, how their student is doing. One of the things at the high school level, I don't know about the elementary level, but we send out weekly progress reports. In my school district, we're required to communicate with parents twice a week, just to let them know what's going on with their children. And I found this is that the parents that are engaged, the students are usually more engaged in learning. And then teachers tend to give kids more respect whose parents are engaged. You usually see that, when a parent is engaged and maybe a kid didn't turn in an assignment or whatever. If a parent asks, can the student turn in an assignment? Many times the teacher will go ahead and let them do that because of the relationship that they have with that parent. Whereas if it's a student who a parent didn't say anything, maybe the teacher won't let them turn that assignment in at all. So that partnership with the home is so very important because it enhances the child's education, because there's a connection. That child knows that the parent knows the teacher knows that the child knows that he's engaged or she's engaged. And so there's more accountability for those students. And so it usually benefits that child when that relationship is strong like that.
Wow, thank you guys so much. Before we move to the next, this is kind of stirring up some thoughts in my mind. And I'm thinking, if there is a parent that's listening, how can we help them? You all represent a wide variety of individuals that are a part of the educational process. And I would love for one or two of you to respond to this next question. It's not directed to any particular individual, but what are some of the greatest mistakes? What are some of the greatest mistakes that you see parents make at the beginning of the educational year, that if you wish you could coach them onto something different, you would do so? What are some of those key things that you think parents miss out on? And it may just be due to awareness, not knowing that these things are important. Let's share. What are some of the things that we wish our parents would do at the beginning of the year?
I'll jump in. It's so much of what everyone has said, right? A lot of times we assume that people know, and we know that people will be destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So parents aren't given a manual. They are given a lot of what they should do and what we expect them to do. What I believe is that if we encourage them and help them to understand what their role is and how important it is at the beginning, then as they go along, they'll feel more comfortable and confident in doing it. making mistakes is a hard thing to handle. And when you're a parent, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but sometimes we don't give people grace because of the things they may be going through in their life. Someone may lose their housing and they're focused on that, and they're trying to make sure their child has somewhere to live more than trying to focus on their education. So, not trying to be hard about that, but that's a real thing, and that's something that they have to deal with. So I believe that if we give people grace in the beginning, give them insight on ways to communicate, because a lot of it is how we communicate with one another. You know, if somebody feels slighted by someone because they may have talked to them a certain way, they don't want to come back and talk to you, because now when I come there, I don't feel like you respect me or that I'm valuable in this space. We even have to make people who are hard to deal with feel welcome in spaces, because we're dealing with their children, and we're dealing with the aspects of what comes from their family to school. So that's my insight.
I
I
agree with
think I
what
would like
Pastor
to answer
Teresa
that
said.
one. I would like
Go
to
ahead.
answer that one. I think having them understand the power of their voice, that their voice matters. I think a lot of times when um, parents are dealing with administrators, teachers, principals, sometimes they feel as if they're not heard. And I and for me, I hope that they would be able to understand in the beginning when that child get ready to start school that they have a voice into their child's education. They have a voice into the changes that may go on within that school system, and they can use their voice. And so I think that would be for me to empower the parents to really pull on them and let them know how valuable they are, whether they make mistakes or not, because we all made them. But also just to know that in their voice, they can bring change, not only change for them, but change for their children.
And not only voice and communication, but at the base of this is relationships. And just sticking with the theme of communications, families don't always know the questions, especially when you're talking about the educational jargon that takes place. Don't always know the right questions to ask. One of the things that we did some years ago in the Cleveland School District was that because we knew that that was a struggle, we actually built out a framework of the right questions that parents could hold us accountable to, that they can go right into that playbook and say, hey, Trent, Mr. Mosley, I need to understand how are you going to be evaluating instruction? How are you, when can we meet about the assessments of my child and go over the results? It was literally a drill down of not us asking them, but empowering the parents with the right questions to ask us. And I just think that when we make it easier for families to communicate in our language, it makes it easier for them to support their children.
Wow, I think that's so powerful. And you guys touched on some things that, because we're talking about a partnership for educational success. And so, just as I asked that question for the parents, and we're coming to you, Dr. Keaton, so get ready. As we asked about this educational success, what I want to also ask is, what are some things that schools can do? Understanding some of the challenges that were outlined here, understanding that we are all fallible and make mistakes, understanding that a lot of parents are entering into an educational system where they may not have a number of educational successes. So they're limited in understanding how to successfully matriculate through these processes. What are some of the things that schools can do to be more inviting to a parent who's interested in their child being successful, but maybe a bit fearful about the process and knowing who to contact? And I'm going to throw that back to you, Mr. Mosley, because we miss you here in Michigan, and we're sad that we lost you. But I'm sure you're doing great work wherever you are.
Thank you, Kareem. Um, so some of the things that we've done, I'm speaking from as a former administrator, uh, is to purposely reach out to families. In fact, let me give you some examples. So there used to be a security guard that we had, Greg and Mitch Barlow. We would actually go out and meet with the families, go to their homes, introduce ourselves. There's three of us. so they know who we were, so that when we called, when we built that relationship, when we called, they pick up the phone immediately, and that it's not a threat. It's not we're calling to tell you something about your child that's bad, but something that we want to have an engaging conversation with you, support your son or daughter. When we did that, we opened up that lens, and it wasn't just the three of us. It was actually the whole team that would go out and do this. So, to answer your question directly, it's about extending yourself first. That you are open, not waiting for the families to come to you, but going to them in the spaces that they occupy, whether it's at church picnics, whether it's not at the grocery store. Start the conversation, because the sooner that you build those relationships, the easier it is that it makes it for that journey for that child.
What are some of the signs of learning and behavioral conditions associated with learning disabilities? And then I will also want to ask this question: are there accommodations, teaching, learning strategies that should be implemented in these cases so that we can notify parents if they believe that their child may fall into that category?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to piggyback off of the last question to answer this one, because I think the biggest thing that I notice with parents, and more so in like our outpatient setting when they're bringing their child in for an evaluation, a lot of parents are not aware of the learning plans that are available to them. So IEPs and 504s. So IEPs are usually kind of a hard and difficult process, and teachers and schools are legally responsible for carrying out this plan. However, a parent has the right to ask for psychoeducational testing for their child. So as a parent, I would say, hey, if you have any concern about your child's learning or them being slow reading and or math, or just there's something about their learning that you're like, I think something's going on, then you have the right to ask for that. And the school is responsible to respond to you in a certain amount of time. So they may not do the IEP, but they have to respond to you. And so we have a lot of tools, and there is a like website, a national website that you can look at and really get someone to coach you through getting resources for your child. And IEPs are given to a special population, so they do have to show that their testing and their skills are behind where they should be to get that. But a 504 plan can almost be given to any child with almost any kind of disorder. So I give it to ADHD. We give it to, oh, you broke your leg, so you need special accommodations for this period of time. So that any diagnosis can almost qualify. And it is a sheet of paper, and it takes me 15 minutes to fill out. And so any PCP or regular pediatrician can fill out this form. So your child will have access to extra time to take a test, or some assignment forgiveness for them missing school, or someone who's an anxious learner. So because they're so anxious and they're worried about doing such a good job that it takes them longer to answer a test, or they see other children answering in class, so they're silent. So there's certain things that teachers can do to accommodate children who are struggling in those ways. So I really want to encourage parents to ask for those things, because it starts with you asking, and then the teacher knows like, oh, okay, they're paying attention. We need to make sure that their child has what they need to be able to be successful.
Thank you so much. I want to make sure that we're being clear with the conversation, because if a parent walks in, there is a lingo and a jargon that you educational folks use that the rest of the world has no clue. And I threw that out there: IEP, individual education plan. And Dr. Keaton also mentioned a 504 plan, which the IEP is the individual plan for the student, but the 504 is a plan that a student, what accommodations will that school provide for that student? Will it be learning? Will it be tablets? Will it be audiobooks? What is a school willing to provide to make sure that equity is brought into the educational process? Oftentimes we think that fair means equitable, and that's not the case. But what are things that we're able to employ so that each student is able to have the same level of education? Angela, look, I want to ask you that very similar question that we asked Dr. Keaton. And I want to just say, how important is it for a parent who is noticing these small things, maybe an inability to pay attention, an inability to stay focused, not completing homework or finding homework that is crumbled up and just kind of thrown in the bag. And we often think they just don't want to do it. How important is it to have our young people tested to find out if they fall on the spectrum or they are part of one of these categories that we're talking about right now?
I think it's very important. I'm going to talk from a clinical perspective. I think when we are using terminology, we have to really be able to break it down to the parent, because the first thing that they would think is, if you say, I think that your child may have a problem with ADHD, the first thing they're going to think is, I don't want my child on medication. So I think that we have to educate the parent first. And I'm going to give you a small example of what I mean by that. I had started working with a student. He had been in the school district for about 3 years. He was recommended to me as a clinician because they were talking about he had behavioral issues, that he wouldn't sit still, and so many other different things that could have been easily diagnosed as ADHD. But when I sat down with the student and I began to get more information from him, they labeled him as being angry and aggressive. He began to share with me in regards to what was going with him in the classroom, because I started asking questions. Okay, tell me why you're angry. What's causing you to be angry? And through the process of that, we discovered that he had inattentive ADHD. And through that, we end up getting him meeting with the administration, meeting with, we had the social worker in there. We also had another counselor in there, and we end up getting him accommodations. And what those accommodations did for him was basically is to give him additional time on test taking. Also, we were able to get him a tutorer, which sat down with him and was kind of walking him through that process. And through that process, his behavior just changed immediately. And the behavior changed because he was angry. Nobody was able to understand him because as he tried to communicate it, teachers didn't understand. They labeled him as something he wasn't. Parent was angry because she didn't feel like she was being heard. And as I sat down with that student, we began to discover some things about what was going on with him. The student began to excel, immediately after we got those accommodations. So I think language is very important when we're talking with parents, because they don't understand what we call ADHD. They don't understand when you tell them that you want their child to be on special accommodations. The first thing they're thinking in their mind is something is wrong with my child. And so I think it's very important that we support them in a different way. And also we have that relationship with them, so they know that we have their best interests at heart, that we're just not labeling their child.
Thank you so very much. Dr. Watson, how do we educate our parents and help them become more informed? Like Angela was saying, she was saying, parents don't want their kids to be labeled. Kids don't want to walk around with a stigma. We're concerned about lifelong issues and how people, when we were kids growing up, kids can be cruel. And having labels sometimes can be a problematic process for kids going through college. What are some things that we can do to educate our parents on the importance of knowing if their child has an educational deficit in terms of their ability to learn, and how they can share that information with the child so that child does not feel like a victim or under circumstances, but are able to use that as a way to empower themselves as they learn and move towards excellence?
Well, I found one of the things that we can do is just, again, I say mindset is so critical. We have to look at when kids have challenges, not as deficits, but as differences. And to see this child as the able to learn, that they have the ability to be successful, they just do it and learn it in a different way. And so when you view it from that lens, then you're saying, then what can be done in the room, in the classroom, also the other support services within the school building that can support this student in a way that connects with the way that they learn best. How do we scaffold the learning? Not dumb down, not eliminate standards and say, well, this kid can't, so we're not even going to expect them to be able to do this. It's they can do it. And here's how we're going to be strategic and intentional about providing opportunities for them to learn and be successful. Again, bringing parents in as partners, because it does take a village. That's a lot on a teacher. I remember being a classroom teacher, and you have 25, 30 students, and they're all very unique and they all have different needs. And for one person to think that they can be the answer to every student and address every need by themselves, they can't do it. So if a teacher is wise, again, they will build those partnerships, as everyone on the panel has been talking about, and empower the parent, like I say, the initial and key educator in that child's life, of ways that they can support. But I would see it as different. They learn different. It's not a deficit, it's a difference.
Dr. Tina, that answer I took a big smile on it, because I'm so thankful for how you laid that out there, because we all have to understand. I run into so many kids who were told that they were stupid, or they couldn't get it, they didn't understand, and you're slow. And the fact of the matter is, our children can learn, our children must learn, and our children will learn. But it requires us as the adults in the room to take the added steps to make sure that that educational process functions in a way that is able to tier that step, one step at a time, toward that learning education. Greatly appreciate your answer.